Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and in this video we will cover if training twice per day is an effective strategy to maximize muscle growth. First, let's cover what exactly we mean when referring to training twice per day. Essentially, for this video, we are referring to resistance training 2 times per day as opposed to a single training session that would be traditionally performed. This would usually involve trainees doing one session in the morning half of the day and another session in the afternoon half of the day. So for the sake of this video, let's use the terminology of AM and PM sessions, referring to the first and second sessions of the day respectively. An important factor to understand here is that training 2 times per day doesn't mean that we are performing twice the amount of work each day. It doesn't mean that we are doubling our training volume. Rather, this refers to splitting a single session into 2 smaller sessions, so we might perform half of the volume in the AM and the other half in the PM. As we can see in this example, one workout has been split into 2 shorter workouts. We have taken the bench press, dumbbell overhead press, and skull crushers to perform in the AM session, and the pull-ups, seated cable row, and cable curls to be performed in the PM session. However, in both programs, the exercises and total number of sets is exactly the same. So why would someone perform 2 sessions per day rather than getting it completed in a single workout? Well, there are many potential reasons for this, but the main one would be due to high training volumes. If trainees are performing a very high number of sets per muscle group per week, each session may take a very long time to complete. Let's say it takes around 1.5 to 2 hours to complete a very high volume training session. Instead, trainees may split this up into 2 workouts, lasting around 45 to 60 minutes each. Furthermore, trainees must also have the available time and a flexible enough schedule to implement twice daily training, so it may not be a viable option for everyone. Let's now explore if twice daily training is in fact more beneficial for hypertrophy training. The first outcome we need to explore is the direct effects of twice daily training on muscle growth. Luckily, we do have one well-controlled study exploring the effects of twice daily training. This study compared the effects of performing the same training volume in a single session versus 2 sessions per day. It was found that there were no significant difference in muscle growth between the groups for all muscles measured in the study. However, we can also see that total workload performed across the 8-week training program was slightly greater in the twice daily training group compared with training once per day. This suggests that training performance was superior when training twice per day. This makes sense since the trainees had more time to rest and would therefore be less fatigued on average for each set. So while performance was superior with twice daily training, this didn't translate to superior muscle growth. However, one issue with this study is the way the researchers split the program up. The subjects performed the same exercises in both the AM and PM sessions, rather than training different muscle groups in each session. This may have been an issue because the muscles would have already been fatigued earlier in the day, impacting the PM training session. In reality, trainees would probably implement twice daily training by hitting different muscle groups in the AM compared with the PM session, allowing each muscle group to be trained in a fresher state. For example, I would have preferred to see the 2 times daily training routine look something like this. As we can see here, different muscle groups are trained in each session. This would allow each muscle group to be trained with less physical and mental fatigue, which will likely allow superior training quality. This may have resulted in a greater hypertrophy response compared with the protocol that was used in the study. So this was the only study we have so far on twice daily training for hypertrophy. However, we also have 2 other bodies of research which can provide indirect evidence on twice daily training. This may help us understand the mechanisms and effects of twice daily training with more clarity. Let's now cover what these are. First, let's look at the frequency research. Frequency refers to the number of times a muscle group is trained per week, assuming volume is equated. This meta-analysis found that training frequency doesn't have a significant impact on hypertrophy outcomes when total weekly volume is equated. However, they did see a general trend in favor of higher frequencies compared with hitting a muscle group only once per week. As we can see in this forest plot, the overall effect size was in favor of hitting a muscle multiple times per week compared with training once per week. This is probably because higher frequencies allow lifters to train in a less fatigued state, improving training quality and performance. As a result, the hypertrophic stimulus may be slightly superior. For example, this can be seen in this study, which explored the effects of training each muscle group 5 times per week compared with a split routine training each muscle only once per week. Although total number of sets were equated between groups, hypertrophy outcomes were slightly greater when training each muscle group with a higher frequency. As we mentioned, this is likely a result of training quality and performance being superior with each session. As we can see, the high frequency group trained with a greater total volume load, indicating that per session performance was superior. While this research is not directly on twice daily training, we can make some inferences from it. Training twice per day is essentially like training with a higher frequency, as it allows trainees to hit each muscle group in a less fatigued state. This would likely have a similar impact to what we see in the frequency research. Training in a less fatigued state will result in superior training quality, which may have a slightly beneficial effect on hypertrophy outcomes. The other body of research we can make inferences from is the evidence on interset rest periods. This systematic review concluded that both shorter and longer interset rest periods were similarly effective at inducing muscle growth. However, the researchers did suggest that the data pointed towards a trend indicating that longer rest periods may be slightly more hypertrophic than shorter rest periods. Similar to the frequency topic, this may be because longer rest periods allow lifters to perform each set in a slightly less fatigued state, therefore allowing superior lifting performance. This idea can be seen in this study, which compared training with 1 minute versus 3 minutes of interset rest. As we can see in the orange bars, longer rest periods resulted in superior muscle growth for all muscles measured. Furthermore, we can see here that average volume load across the 8-week training program was greater in the long rest group across the 8-week training program. Like the frequency topic, this suggests that trainees were able to lift more weight or perform more reps on average with longer rest periods. Once again, this research is not directly on twice daily training, although we can make inferences from it. Training twice per day in a sense is similar to implementing longer rest periods in the fact that it allows us to train in a less fatigued state. And like we have seen with both the frequency and rest period research, this seems to provide a slightly superior hypertrophic stimulus compared with training in a highly fatigued state. So this brings us to the primary indirect effect of training twice per day. Like we have alluded to, training twice per day ultimately allows improvements in training quality. By training quality, we are referring specifically to 2 primary factors. First is lifting performance, like we've discussed. Training twice per day allows us to train in a less fatigued state, which allows us to lift more weight or perform more reps per set, compared with performing the same workload in one session. And the second factor is lifting intent. This doesn't really have a strict definition, but it generally refers to our focus to deliberately train the target muscle. When training twice daily, our sessions will be shorter and we will be less fatigued. This means we are likely to train with greater intent during each session compared with performing one session. As most of us have experienced, towards the end of a high volume training session, it can be difficult to apply the same focus and concentration for the last few sets compared with the first few sets of the session. Training twice per day alleviates this issue to some extent by allowing us to train in a more physically and mentally fresh state. So now we have covered the primary physiological effects of training twice daily. However, this also has some practical influences on our training routine too. These practical effects may be seen as a positive or a negative depending on the individual. The main practical influence that twice daily training has is that it requires lifters to perform 2 shorter sessions per day rather than 1 longer session. For some people, this may be a practical benefit. For example, if a trainee only has a few short time windows to train throughout the day, then they may struggle to get their entire session completed in one go. Rather, it may be beneficial to perform 2 smaller sessions, allowing them to complete their entire workout comfortably rather than rushing. For example, this could benefit someone who only has a 45-minute lunch break from work and another short training block after work to get their training in. If the gym is on site or they are working from home and have a home gym, it could be a viable option to split their workout into 2 shorter sessions. Furthermore, if a trainee has plenty of free time and essentially unlimited time to train throughout the day, then they may opt to lift twice per day out of enjoyment being at the gym. Another practical benefit is that training twice per day may allow us to train with more volume. So if we are already training with a high training volume and can benefit from more, then twice daily training could have a positive effect. This is because adding more volume to a single session will probably be of low quality if volume is already high. Rather, a second session provides additional opportunities to add a few sets without compromising quality. So, although twice daily training can have its practical benefits, for most people in most situations, it is going to be more of an inconvenience rather than a benefit. This is because it gives us less flexibility in the rest of our life. Essentially, we must work the rest of our life around our AM and PM sessions, which provides less opportunity for everything else. If we get our workout completed in a single session, it is one bout of exercise throughout the day, which means the rest of our day can be dedicated to other work or activity. Furthermore, if we have to commute to the gym, this means we spend more time traveling to and from our workouts, further taking up more time. Ultimately, the practical side of twice daily training will be highly individual based on each trainee's specific lifestyle. For most, it will be more of an inconvenience, but for some it may have its unique practical benefits. So to summarize this video, let's establish some practical recommendations. Although the limited evidence we have shows that twice daily training is no more effective than training once per day, there is indirect evidence that it may be slightly superior. Based on the frequency and interset rest research, it seems likely that twice daily training can be beneficial for hypertrophy outcomes. Splitting your workout into 2 sessions will allow you to train in a less fatigued state, which can improve training quality, which is likely to provide a slightly superior training stimulus. Furthermore, twice daily training may provide opportunities for lifters to accumulate more total weekly volume, which we know can have a significant influence on muscle growth. However, twice daily training is probably going to be practically less convenient for most trainees. It requires us to schedule more of our day around training sessions and increases our time commuting to and from the gym, which can make it more difficult to organize other events and activities. So for most people, training twice per day is probably not realistic, nor is it mandatory to achieve great muscle growth over time. However, for a very select group of individuals, twice daily training may be something they want to implement. This would be for lifters who have the sole training goal of maximizing muscle hypertrophy at the expense of lifestyle flexibility, who are already performing very high volume training sessions, and those who have a very flexible schedule that allows them to train twice daily. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something out of this video. Check out flowhighperformance.com for online coaching, training templates, ebooks, and more.